Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. I hope you've had a wonderful week. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Del. This is the topic we were planning to do. It's going to be good.
Yes, it is. Yes, especially because I have children and you don't. So we're going to have really two great perspectives on whether or not to have children. There's many reasons why people choose to have children, and many reasons why people choose not to have children. And sometimes it's not a choice. And that's why I think a lot of people were extremely offended by the comment of childless, crazy cat ladies. Not that I think that choosing not to have children is a crazy choice by any means. It's everybody's prerogative whether they have children or not. But some people can't have children. And I think those are the people that were particularly offended by that comment, that their value was less because they hadn't had children. And we're talking about this on the tail end of what we talked about last week about trad husbands and the week before trad wives, that there is this, a traditional view from some people that women's roles are to have children. And and I think we need to challenge that.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I'll speak to as well is that besides the inability to have children, is also the choice that happens, because I know quite a few of my clients and quite a few of my friends and some women who are collaborators with me are childless because that was the way life dealt them the cards. Not they couldn't have them, it's just their life didn't fit that paradigm, because the way they were living their life, they went through a marriage where that was so a blessing that they got out of before they had children, that they missed that timing. Because the other challenge of this conversation is sometimes with kids is you now have a shared product with somebody else that you may not have a good relationship with. So in some ways, I said that intentionally, make it very mechanical, but the reality is when you have joint custody with another parent who is not somebody you want to be with on any level, it can be very challenging with kids. So there's lots of different frameworks and ways to look at this thing. And of course, the other one on top of that is stepchildren, because being in a relationship with somebody who already has kids, and I've done that a couple of times, is different from being the actual parent. So there's lots of nuances to talk about today, I think.
No, an awful lot. I don't know if we're going to get it all in one show, quite honestly. And you bring up a really important point, and it can also work the other way. I often think that if you have had children with your partner and the relationship is not working out, and you might even despise them, I think one of the things that helps with those feelings is, I always say to not that I don't despise my ex by any means, but the one thing that I do focus on more than the painful aspects of the relationship was the fact that he gave me the two children I have. I always said to myself, I may have had children with somebody else, but they would have been different children. But the two children I have, the two beautiful boys that I have, they are uniquely from my ex-husband and my union. And I focus on that. So it helps me be grateful that I had him in my life for however long I had him in my life, which was a long time. And continue, because you're right, that it never ends. You are always going to be co-parents of these children. The other thing that I really want to touch on today, because that again is something that I have come across in my own life, as in one of my sister's experiences, but also with a couple of clients I've had, and that is when one of the partnership want children and the other one doesn't. Or they want another child and the other one doesn't. They're happy with the one they have or whatever it is. And that is something I think we have to really, really look at. I don't think it's fair for anybody to be in a relationship with somebody that has made it very, very clear from the beginning that they have no desire for a child, and for the other person to stay with them and resent them and try and change their minds. And I've seen that and seen it, and it is so difficult. And as I said, I witnessed it. I had a sister that wanted another child and her partner didn't. and the child she had wasn't his, but she wanted a child with him, and he already had, a child from his previous marriage. And he just was very clear from the very beginning, I do not want another child. And it was something that tore my sister apart for years and years and years. And I would say tore their relationship apart.
Yeah.
Um, I think we have to believe people when they say things. And if that is their decision, no more children, don't hang in there hoping they'll change their mind or that you can change their mind. Let it go. It's sad. It's awful, especially when everything else is right to walk away from a relationship. But I also have a friend that walked away from a relationship because, again, the partner didn't want children. She did. And she was very lucky. She found a beautiful man that, what she said, one of the very first things she mentioned when she was dating again after the breakup of her marriage was, are you interested in having children? That's why I left my last husband. I loved him, but he didn't want children. And she remarried and has a beautiful child and is very happy and gets on great with her ex. So it's just about being honest about who you are and what you want, and having the conviction to go out and get it, and potentially leave somebody that everything else ticks the box. You love them, they're great, they're wonderful, but they just do not want children. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting subject. Definitely one of the most, for me, one of the most beautiful things in my life is having my children. But I know that's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about your. I know you've been a stepfather, but talk about your. Was it a decision that you didn't want to have your own children? Was it timing, like you discussed before? It wasn't the right person at the right time.
There was a going back when I was probably late teens. There was this belief system I had somehow that because I was the firstborn, that I had to have a child to carry the lineage of the family forward. There was some wiring out like that. That I blew out pretty quickly in my late 20s. But after that point, there was no drive to be a parent necessarily, and my relationship cycles and paradigms I was in, the early ones, we weren't to that point of having that relationship be that deep, so we're going to get married and have kids. It wasn't on the agenda. But later relationships, into my 40s and beyond, were with women who had children. 2 times out of the time, just thinking how many of those happened. And the thing was that it was a role that I could step into fairly easily in one of them, and wasn't even available in the other one. So I had both experiences of being a quote possible tentative step parent. I wasn't step parent exactly because we weren't married, but I was in a relationship with a woman who had 2 kids, and she was widowed, so there was no stepfather. There's no original father in the picture, so the kids were without a biological father, which may have made it easier. I don't know, but the relationship they had, when I walked into it, the three of them, her and the 2 kids, was I won't say effortless, but it was very smooth. And it wasn't that I was suddenly the parent, but I became like the in a way a role model for the son, but also a friend to the daughter. I became like, I was not like the father role. It wasn't my job at that point, but I felt the sense of entrustment of being a safe place for them to be, for me to be with them, for them to be with me. So that worked out really well. The other one, well, to be honest, when we were dating, she was still divorcing her husband at the time, and the daughter was being ping ponged by the parents. So I ended up being the extra person that was in the way. And so I watched the daughter act out on me what she couldn't voice to her parents because they were having such a mess up. I became the target for her, I totally got it at the time. So I didn't get like really upset about it. But it's interesting to witness, and it's funny because it's been several years, and I bumped into the father, and I became friends. His ex-wife, my girlfriend, and I fell out completely after we broke up. It's interesting how that worked out. But watching that paradigm, but the thing I want to speak to, shifting gears slightly, because talking about changing minds and decisions, I have a couple of friends of mine I've known for 25, 30 years now, who, when they fell in love with each other, they're both from Chicago, they're out in LA. I met them through the same spiritual community I belong to, decided to get married because they both didn't want kids. That wasn't the only reason, but it was like one of the things like, well, you don't want kids, great, no problem. That was a good check mark in their column saying, we match up, let's get together. They're both in entertainment, both from Chicago, so lots of plus signs. But not having kids was also in the column, like they didn't want it. I would say 10 years after they got married, she got pregnant, and they both were happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't they planned for it. They weren't saying we're never going to have kids. It was just like, no, don't want a kids. Great. Don't want to have kids. Great. Got together. But the paradigm shifted. And the truth is now, I mean, they have been amazing parents. Their daughter's now in her 20s. She's a musician. She's a creative spirit like her parents are as well. And I watch the joy they have with their child that they didn't plan for necessarily, but happened through the way it happened. So there's lots of different variations in the story that we're talking about here. And that decision to have kids or not, it's not like you go into it, as you said exactly. You don't want to go into a relationship with somebody who clearly doesn't want to have kids, hoping they might change their mind. No, you've got to be on the same page as the other person. But again, as time evolves, things might change as well. Not to hold out for that, but just be open to that.
But 100%. It's so interesting you sharing that story, because I have a very similar story with a friend of mine who they had been together for years, both creatives again from New York, so I know they're not the same couple. And and they there was when they were younger, they didn't want children. Then there was just this assumption that they were never going to have children. And all of a sudden, in her 40s, she gets pregnant, and they're like, "Oh my God!" And they had evolved and grown together so much, and were at a different stage in their life where they thought, "Wow, this was very unexpected. Let's go for it." So yes, there are those exceptions, and I think that's different. That is a period of time has elapsed, a situation occurs, you both reassess, and you decide if it's right for you or not. But
Right.
again, I think if one did want the child and the other didn't, you can't force a child on the other person. I mean, if it's that important to you and you want to go ahead and have the child, then you might have to let go of the relationship. But these are things that each couple has to decide for themselves. And again, I have children right now who are saying they live in a very different world than that I grew up in. I was in no hurry to have children. I didn't have my first child till I was 34, actually, or 33, 34. And I wasn't in a hurry because I loved my career. I was a costume designer and I was having so much fun. I was like, oh, there's plenty of time for children. But I knew
Hmm.
that at some point I was going to want to have children. My ex at the time, who ironically, when I first met him, said he'd never wanted children, was all of a sudden like, "I want children. I want your children now." Like, that typical moving very fast. And
Right.
so, so anyway, we did have children, and it was so beautiful. And I was very much like, "Oh my God," thank God I did this. It was, for me, it felt like moving from I often describe it as going from a black and white world into a technicolor world. The expanse for the capacity to love was you know it grew exponentially, but so did fear. All of a sudden, fear, because you've got this precious, beautiful, beautiful little thing that is so reliant on you for their safety, and so it's a very emotional time. But what I've gone off subject. What I want? Oh, I know what it was. You said this is one of the reasons that one of the. I mean, like I said, there's many reasons why people have children. They want to love and nurture another human being, bring another human being into the world, guide that human being to being the best human being they can possibly be. But then there are other people that want to have children, or they have pressure from their grandparents or whatever, or their parents rather, would be grandparents, to continue that lineage, to continue
Hmm.
the name. That is not a reason to have children. Sorry
No.
to say, but raising children is challenging on every level. They are not extensions of you. They are a beautiful gift that comes through you for a certain amount of time. And for those that haven't read Khalil Gibran's the
But
Prophet,
yeah.
um, we're borrowing them for a short time. We are the bow, they are the arrow. What we do as parents is to give them stability, and then hopefully shoot them off into the world and have them be their own person. And
Right.
we've done the best we can to guide them and give them the tools that are necessary, but they're not ours. And that's another thing. Some people have children because they think that, oh, well, when I get old, I'll have somebody that can look after me. Again, not a reason to have children. This is not an insurance policy. You know,
They didn't get born in agreement with that idea, so you can't presume they'll do that for you.
well, you're deluding yourself. And again, that sort of expectation or that demand that your child be an extension of you and are there to make you happy. It's a byproduct that having children is very rewarding, but again, very challenging. Not everybody is built to be a parent, and being honest about whether you can be a parent or, not, or a good parent is something everybody should ask themselves.
Hmm. It's interesting because you said about how your husband got clear, your ex husband got clear like you want to have kids with you like now was the thing. And I remember like in my journey, I never had that feeling that I was like looking to have kids, and especially because I spent a lot of time in my own, not being in a relationship, that there was a sense of having children would be a whole different paradigm to play in that wasn't where I was lining up to be with, and had I and in full transparency, if I met the person I want to be with the rest of my life back then and I got married, probably would have been a parent, and probably happily so. But it wasn't in my path at that point. And looking back, I don't have regrets about it. It's the biggest thing I think for me. I was saying, anybody's in the same boat is that if you look back with regret about what you did or didn't have, that isn't going to help you with anything. And I'm grateful for the journey I've had, and I have no yearning wish for something to be different than it was, and I should have had this, that, and the other. It's like, no, I don't have that at all. So I feel very comfortable in the place I'm in. And yes, my next relationship may well involve children who probably are adults at this point because I'm dating someone who's that old enough to have kids that are adults. So that's a different relationship entirely as well, different paradigm, different conversation.
Hmm.
So this having children or not, it is a hindsight thing for me now looking back,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that, seeing it that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's two things I want to comment on. One is, see if I can remember, because I'm going to talk about one and then I'll forget the other one. But I know when I was very young, when I was 16, I really wanted children. I had such a chaotic life. I had such it just wasn't traditional in any shape or the form. I felt very unloved, unwanted, uncared for, and all I wanted was my own little living doll that was mine that I could love and connect to. And as much as I understand it, I am so grateful that I did not have a child at 16. But I
Right.
do understand that feeling very much so. And my heart goes out to young mothers that have had very disruptive childhoods, and that is their, you know, they want somebody to love of their own. They want that unconditional love. And
Like
some
an
of
escape,
say it again, an escape.
like an escape from the old paradigm in a way.
Yes, it's to obtain the love from a little being that they have never received, and some of those young girls become really great parents. Some of them do learn that unconditional love and give that child what they never received, and some of them just haven't done the healing yet and aren't equipped to really parent in a healthy way. And
Yeah.
sometimes they can become overly, codependent or attached to that child and see that child as an extension of them, and it can get very challenging. So my advice is, um, to do the work first, to become healthy before having a parent. Know, question how you were parented. Is that a model you want to continue, or do you want to break the cycle? But it takes work to undo. I mean, I love my mother very much, but there were ways that she parented that were very unhealthy, and I'm really glad that I waited. I'm glad that I got enough therapy to be able to, because I was so enmeshed with my mother, I couldn't. I just was emulating her in the beginning because obviously before I had children, but just her way of life to basically say she did nothing wrong. So look, I'm just like her. Well, as I matured and I was able to understand that I could be objective, I could still love her, but still look at some of the things she did and say, that wasn't very healthy for her
Right.
or for her children. So again, I think that to really question whether you are ready to be a parent, to really be the type of parent that will produce a beautiful, healthy child that has a chance at life.
Right. So getting back to what you said right at the beginning about childless cat ladies,
Mhm.
I strongly suspect that from women who, if you, especially if you're in the beginning of this journey, you're thinking about that future, about whether you should have kids or not, it doesn't hurt to test drive, so to speak, by having a pet, cat or a dog or something like that, because it gives you a chance to, one, have that love, if it's especially with a dog, that you may be seeking, and then you can discover if that's really what's driving you, or if it's something more than going on. Because the thing is, having a pet can give you a lot of the emotional feeling, the emotional response, that sense of connection that you wanted instead of having a child, and you have a lot less. I want to say responsibility is not the right word, but a lot less to keep you occupied in a sense. You can be a little bit less invested in a sense. Now,
Mm.
these words are right, but the difference in having a dog versus as a kid is a lot different, basically. So
Well,
test driving with a pet is a good idea.
a child is for life. Even if they leave home, there's still that
Right.
connection. And most cats and dogs don't live beyond 20. I mean, even sort of
Right.
14 for some of the bigger dogs, 12, 14. It's so funny you're saying that because I've just got back from a 2-week trip, and I got a lot in 2 weeks. I went to Paris, to England, to Wales, and to Ireland, and so every 4 days I packed up and moved on. And the reason I crammed it all into 2 weeks was because of my dog.
Mhm.
Because when I had children, I called them my pack and go children. I would disappear for 3 months, 4 months, and just take my kids everywhere. But I don't have that luxury with a dog. So it's really funny you're saying that dogs are easier.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, but what I actually noticed, it was so funny. I thought, oh my gosh, I never left my children when they were little. I just didn't. I wouldn't have enjoyed myself without them. And I was reminded of that when I was missing my dog.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, my son was taking care of him, and my son assured me that the dog was fine and he wasn't missing me that much, so I could relax and have a good time.
There you
But
go.
going back to, I did exactly what I thought I would do, which is forget the other point I wanted to make. But if I don't change it, it will come back. But,
Mhm.
um, but that I do think that it's very, very important. I mean, everybody says it's a bit of a cliche, but anybody can get a pet, but we don't have to have a license for having a child. I think educating yourself, really reading about parenting techniques, and making the decision that's right for you and your family, but not just um, parent like your parent parented because that's natural to you. It's good to question. We have evolved, as you said, we've grown, we've learned a lot. Psychology is really helping us understand that there are things that we may have done that are completely innocently that are damaging our children.
Yeah.
So, yes, read parenting books. And again, know that there's nothing wrong with knowing that you don't want children. Oh, I know what I was going to say about the we live in a different world right now, and a lot of our young people are concerned about climate change. They are concerned about bringing children into a world that's unstable. Um,
Hmm.
and I think those are good questions to ask yourself. Is this the right time? Not just am I is it the right time for me to be a parent and take on that responsibility, but is the world as it is right now a safe place to bring children in? It's okay to ask that.
Yeah.
And your value is that, oh, I know what I was going to say. There's another thing. I think about people like, well, one of my spiritual teachers, she doesn't have children, but she is so nurturing and loving and warm. You can still you can still be a parental role. You can still nurture love unconditionally without having your own children. I see her as being a parent to a big community. I think there are many people that have take on that role. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, I think she was a great role model for many, many people and didn't have her own children. Uh, I mean, our teachers, Ron and Mary Helnick, how many children did they, with how many years did they do USM? How many thousands of people went through those doors that they
Right.
were very loving and nurturing and warm towards, but didn't have their own children. So it's not. people that don't have children, it doesn't mean that you can't still um, fulfill that role of being a great role model, nurturing, loving unconditionally. It just might look a little different.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's the thing is, I guess the bottom line will say is that there's definitely, I would say, there's no one answer to this question, frankly. That what we're talking about here is that the decision to have children or not, it's like we don't say, okay, the answer to this question is no, move on. It's like, no. This conversation is really showing you as a listener, as a reviewer, how much of a spectrum there is and how many choices there are in this conversation. I think above all, the only thing I would say is the one overriding quality in this is that if you're having children, know what you're walking into, what you're committing to, because that's a big requirement of this thing. But the decision to have children clearly has many different parts and components and moving pieces of this to really discover. So this idea of being in a relationship and having a family and building that community together the way you want to do it, as you said, if your only mission is to have great lineage, that's not a good decision to make it on. So have an understanding about what you're choosing and why you're choosing it. Because like you were saying that you were lucky enough to not have kids at 16 years old, that what you then discover is that what you're seeking is not necessarily the child, but what you get from the child. And
Exactly.
then can you focus on what you can get somewhere else, like with a pet or with a social group or something else? So you don't need to take on the responsibility and the longevity of having a child that you raise through adulthood just to get the feeling that you wanted for 10 minutes, which is what some people would do. That's the craziness of this. So yes, there are options here, and clearly knowing what your reasoning is for why you want to have a child, but also why you may not want to have a child, and be okay with it. Truth is, whichever way you make the decision, either one is okay. You just got to know it's the truth for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep, and you know what? You can still be a crazy cat lady and have children. I'm both.
Yep.
As my dog, I had two giant, great big half Maine Coon rescues that were teeny weeny little kittens when I got them, and I had no idea they were going to grow into 18-pound cats. But
Oh
um,
yeah.
they are, love of my lives too, next to my children. So, yeah, just as I love what you said. Don't have a child for what they can do for you. Have a child for for what you can do for them. I mean,
Mm,
obviously, you get something back. You do.
yeah.
But just yes, you're right. At 16, I would have been doing it to fill a hole, n-
Hmm.
not from the sense of can I be the best parent I can be. It was a selfish, which I don't blame myself at all. I can completely understand why I would think that way. But it was coming from a lack as opposed to I have an abundance of love to share and to give, and I think I can be a great parent and a great role model to another human being.
Yeah. There you go. That's really the bottom line positioning from which to come from. So yeah, this is kind of a real conversation, a really valuable piece of information for people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you again for another great conversation, Barry. I love these weekly chats we have.
Yeah, they go rich and they go deep.
I Well, have a fabulous week, everybody, and we will see you all next week. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.